Most entrepreneurs, and probably many people in the room, can attest to the idea that you don't know if it's a great idea. And so we just followed our personal preference at that time and said, we think that there's an opportunity for this. Then we listened to the consumers, paid attention to what was working in the market. Here was the learning. We would go into a distributor and they would always have an opinion. We'd go into a distributor and they would say, this is high alcohol, so it's gonna work in the inner city. This is flavored, it's gonna work on near college campuses. Someone would say something else. So what we ultimately decided is just get it out and let people decide what it is.
Has anybody had this drink today?
Thank you. Hopefully you liked it.
This wasn't the first drink that you had,
It was
though,
not.
Right? Where did it begin? Because I'm curious how we ended up here from where we started. A little bit of history.
How much time do you want me to take?
Well, the room's still.
So the first drink was really started by my personal preferences. I was 22 years old. I was doing nightclub promotions. Red Bull and vodka was really the drink of that time. And I simply thought somebody should just put this stuff together. And so me and two college buddies decided to start a brand that became known as Four Loko.
Who's had an experience with this, please? This is a double hand from the kid in the back. Just gave away $100,000. Of age. I have a bigger beer. That's definitely dad energy. So the reason why this is important to us is we're trying to build a cultural movement too with the combinations that we're doing. Why did you, there's no way you thought that this cultural movement towards this would be that great. How did you get to the point of going, this is an incredible idea, we're going to continue to do this?
Well, I think most entrepreneurs, and probably many people in the room, can attest to the idea that you don't know if it's a great idea, right? And at first, it wasn't a great idea because we came out with a brand called Four, and it was a different iteration of what ultimately came known as Four Loko, and it didn't work. And so we just followed our personal preference at that time and said, we think that there's an opportunity for this. Then we listened to the consumers, paid attention to what was working in the market. And by the way, this all is fascinating to me because we don't do anything D2C. I mean, we're brand new to it with this product, but none of my experience is D2C. It's all retail. So hearing a lot of the stuff here is fascinating. But anyways, we listen to consumers at the store. We're in the early days of social media, so we're just listening to feedback. People were kind of taking these products and creating content in those days around them, and we just heard what they were saying, and we iterated.
How did you know that the culture was ready to take this and drink this, though? It was everywhere. I was a 90s kid. I drank it on the way to the game concert. I got absolutely destroyed, and I was like, I don't know what to do with my life.
I don't know that we knew the culture was ready, and I don't know that we could have known. It was kind of one of those get it out and see, and maybe you guys are experiencing the same thing right now with Breeze, right? But we focused on very simple attributes. It was once we heard that people wanted more alcohol, it was ramp up the alcohol. They wanted a bigger can. And to be honest, I was against that. I said, nobody can drink 24 ounces of this stuff. It's not going to work.
What was the iterations of that? Was it?
So it went from 16 ounces, a 16-ounce can at 5% alcohol, or 6% alcohol, to then up to 10% alcohol in a 16-ounce can. And then we kind of threw a Hail Mary out because we were on the verge of going bankrupt. We said, let's throw a 24-ounce can out there at 11% alcohol. And honestly, we noticed there was one competitor that was out there at 9.9% alcohol, and they were kind of working a little bit on the West Coast. We were Midwest-based. And we said, okay, let's just go out higher than them. So let's do 11. And once it started working, what used to happen is we would send product into a distributor. I would call them 2 weeks later. I would plan to come in. I would do a kickoff meeting. I would launch the brand in the market with their distributor reps. Okay. I would leave. I'd call them, a month later. Hey, do you guys need more inventory? Because we didn't have data systems checking their inventory and stuff. We're just bootstrapping this thing. And they would always say, no, we're good. And we sent the first truckload of Four Loko, at least in my territory, into North Carolina. And before I even got there to kick off the brand, it was gone. And it was the first time I'd ever experienced something. It was crazy. So once we knew we had something there, we just went fast and deep. And we started looking at the regulations, and we realized that you could actually go up to 12% alcohol in most states and still be considered a beer, which was important for us, right? Because the tax is lower and the distribution is wider on beer than it is on liquor, if it was considered liquor.
How did the beer industry react to this? Were you like, oh, cool, bring more? Or they were like, you're not us?
I think that, yeah, they were definitely like, you're not us. I remember specifically at a beverage, like, it was the Blue Blazer crew. Like, you'd go there and everybody's older and they're all wearing blue blazers and khakis, and that's like the old boys network. And we were these young guys coming in, we don't even know the rules. We're just not following any of them. We don't give a shit, right? But it's working. And when you're making people money, they don't care. And so we were welcomed in, but then when everybody was with their kind of like their boys network, we were kind of on the outside, right?
Yeah, right?
Just kind of how it worked.
And the branding was, I remember it, yes, the taste, the expect, but the branding was very different. It was very like aggressive.
Yeah.
Was that you? Was that your brain? Where'd you come with that?
That was actually one of my partners. So we were trying to figure out we had no money, right? Luckily we had no money because everything that we did that people told us to do to build a successful beverage business didn't work. And so if we had more money, we would have spent more money doing shit that didn't work, right? So it was out of like necessity that we're at the very end of the rope where literally my two partners, I'm like, go get your jobs back, get back into your industries. I'll run this thing and try to earn some money back for our families, like, because their families have put money in.
Right.
And we'll see what happens. And so we're like, what can we do to stand out? Because we're mostly in convenience stores or independent liquor stores. Like, you have 2 seconds. What makes this different? And one of my partners like, I don't know, let's throw a camo pattern on it. And at that time, nothing looked like that, right? Nothing looked like that. So that was the first thing. We said, it's kind of crazy. Let's just call it Loko. It was very like unscientific, just like back of the napkin, like finger in the air. I don't know, this seems right. Let's try it. Nothing to lose. And it worked.
Did Mexicans love it?
It does really well in Mexico now.
Okay. Okay. So my experience with this was, if you didn't have much time to get on a level that all your other friends were when they were already pretty toasted, you would drink a Four Loko as fast as humanly possible.
Yeah, I think that's what happened.
And so you're hitting this experience, and so everybody, when you're finished with the bottom, the joke in art. So I would live in Orange County, California, and I drank more illegally than I did legally, and I'm sitting here and I'm going like, oh man, I got to really do this. And this is the thing that we all grabbed. And at the bottom, we always made the joke. It's like, first one to get to the bottom was the first one to fall asleep.
To fall asleep. This must be post-caffeine.
It was post-caffeine.
Yeah, okay.
And so the mixture of that ingredient, did you get, the fear I have is, you create a product like this, parents see this, their kid might have a negative experience on this. Did any of this like weigh on you? Did you start realizing like what it was doing to culture? Because people were drinking this. This was big.
No, it's a good question. I have 3 kids now, and I'm not in the alcohol industry anymore. I mean, I still own, and my partners still own Four Loko, but I don't actively manage it anymore. And I've had to think about that question now with kids approaching the age that they could potentially drink. And here's the reality and what I was always centered in. Let me add another wrinkle to the story. My mom suffered from, battled with addiction since the time I was 12.
Oh boy.
And she got sober 12 years ago. And the guy that was up here before said he's old as fuck. I'm sure I'm older than him. So it's been a long time that she was struggling with addiction. Okay. She said that she's been sober, she'd go into AA rooms, and every week she would hear the story like, oh man, I hit rock bottom. When I knew I hit rock bottom, I was drinking Four Lokos. And
oh my God.
She would just be like, anyways, the point is, it always goes back to me of like, we did everything legally. Every state, the federal government, everybody approved everything we did, literally until a month before they banned the product or they banned the formulation. My take was always like, look, this maybe is shitty, but it's the reality. If it's not this, it's something else. If you want to drink, you're going to find something to drink. You could chug a bottle of vodka, you can house 12 beers, you can drink a Four Loko. There's options, right? And it was also, if this is not safe, then change the rules entirely.
So we can play with it.
We can play within whatever rules you outline, but just make them standard for everybody. And unfortunately, what ended up happening, which was the first time I kind of got to be a little bit untrusting of government and any big agency, is they made a very narrowly defined rule that only affected us.
What year was around this?
This was 2010. So they said that logical discussion, right? Caffeine and alcohol is not safe. Okay, what about Red Bull and vodka? Oh, well, that's behavioral. People are mixing that. Okay, cool. So if it's pre-mixed, that's not safe. Yes. Okay. So what about caffeine in these like chocolate or coffee stouts? Is that not safe? We don't know. Ultimately, what they came back and said is that artificially added caffeine to a malt-based beverage was unsafe and therefore illegal, but that left this giant loophole. You now see canned espresso martinis and all these other, and I applaud those entrepreneurs. I think you should play with whatever rules they give you, right? You guys are in that space right now, but it was just very narrowly defined and unfair.
Yeah, I know you're gonna ask this. Go ahead. Hold on. Kiana, can you grab that, honey? Hey, first off, for being vulnerable and talking about it, I just want to clap real quick for Chris. I really appreciate you going this way. We're gonna keep going, but
like seriously, thank you for being here and just sharing the story. I think there's so many entrepreneurs that just fear opening up about these kind of things, and I know it's super valuable for me and for our team. But you make an interesting point. Like, there's what you can do, and then there's like, what should you do? And like, I'm sure you've thought about that countless times. And like, what were you thinking then? Like, was it that like? I think it kind of seems like people are already taking Red Bull and they're already taking vodka. They're already doing espresso martinis. Like, why don't we just create the first ready drink that facilitates what people are already doing themselves? What was the ethical line, or like, how did you think of the ethics of it? Because I pondered this a lot myself.
Yeah, so for me, I would not put out anything I wouldn't drink or consume myself. So I was a consumer. So I felt okay with that. Now, I was also very young, and life was very different than it is now, right? So maybe my ethical line or moral compass might be a little bit different. I will say that I won't speak for my partners. For me personally, like, I come from a lower middle class, blue collar family. Like, we didn't have a lot of money. This was my shot, and I was gonna fucking take it, and I was gonna make it work, right? And so when something was working, we're gonna keep going with it, right? My justification was we are within the rules and regulations, and they're set out to protect us. This is a 3-tier system. If you're worried about underage drinking, and we went to the government agencies and said this, if you're worried about underage drinking, let's go address it at the bodega or the C-store that's selling the stuff.
Where they're getting access to it.
Yeah, where they're getting access, right? And we all know the reality, right? People are gonna find their way to things no matter what. But like, I just felt like it was really unfair to put that whole, the onus of the entire thing on us. So what I will say, though, is by pushing that boundary, we further alienated ourselves from the entire industry.
Oh, wow.
No one, we were going all the way with it. Okay, we can do, and my partners have done this since, like, Four Loko is now 13.9% alcohol. Like, it's really strong because you can legally go up to it, and that's fine. That's the brand ethos. But yeah, the industry kind of like tried to find a way to protect themselves and insulate us, and I think that probably there was a good and bad.
How did that play out? Like, they tried to disassociate your brand from their existing ecosystems and infrastructures. Like,
the alcohol industry is highly involved in regulatory issues, right? Very big in lobbying and all of that stuff. And I literally had it's in my book, so I'm fine saying it, but I literally had a conversation with Jim Koch, the founder of Boston Beer, right before they made the ruling. And I knew he weighed, he had a heavy voice in that industry. And I said, what do you think? How are you going to weigh in on this? And he gave a very self-serving answer. He's like, I don't know, we'll see. He's like, I think what ultimately happened, artificially added caffeine to malt is going to be unsafe. And I said, man, that's fucking convenient for you, isn't it? But that's how they
their market share in the process. So it really wasn't about the product or the outcome. Like, that was already being facilitated by maybe vodka's product. But because you were literally taking away their market share, eliminating you from the market was the best bet for them.
I can only speculate, but yes, I think that look, there's only so much cooler space. Every facing I get, they lose. I mean, we were in the big beer distributors, Anheuser-Busch and Miller Coors. They had played in this space a little bit, and they got a little bit of pressure, and ultimately they had bigger fish to fry, and they voluntarily stepped out of it. And we came in and there was a time where we were taking over entire cooler doors in C-stores. I mean, especially in Southern California.
We were all over, dude. It was every AM, PM was all over the place down by us.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I can ask one more follow-up, but I think this is, I think that you're super I think that the idea and what happened with Four Logos seems to be like really heinous how it actually played out. Like, the idea of you bottling what people were already doing at scale is just like facilitating what they're doing. So criminal. that I think that it participated. And I think that you playing within the rules is fair too. And I see how you're saying, even with like the ethics, like we're just facilitating what's already happened. But I guess my question is like, there's that, and then there's also the brand and the culture that you shifted and affected. And like, how did you think about that? Because like, I don't disagree. The distributors are the ones who get to decide whether the products become available. But aren't you creating the ethos of what the brand is, and what were you guys creating, and what did it turn into?
So we were very, again, put yourself back in the time, right? This is 2008, like MySpace was kind of a thing, like YouTube was a thing, but nothing else really existed. And we tried to play a little bit in some of the, on MySpace and some of those platforms, Instagram early days, and then they weren't age verified. So this is like really early days for that stuff. And then we decided like, we're not gonna do any of that. We're not gonna, what we thought is we're gonna let this be a discovery product, and we're gonna let people decide what it is for them. And what we found most about, here was the learning. We would go into a distributor and they would always have an opinion. We'd go into a distributor and they would say, this is high alcohol, so it's gonna work in the inner city. And we'd say, yeah. We'd go to another distributor and they go, this is flavored, it's gonna work on near college campuses. Yeah. Someone would say something else. And so what we ultimately decided is like, just get it out and let people decide what it is. And they kind of created the ethos themselves. And I think what happened is like, maybe you can attest this, the first person in your group that discovered Four Loko, they went and talked about it like, you guys got to try this stuff, right?
It was a thing. It was a game.
It went viral among your group, but you guys discovered it and owned it. We didn't tell it. We didn't tell you it. You know, we never put a picture of a person on any point of sale. We never had, this isn't white, this isn't black, this isn't Hispanic. This is like, what we did realize is the older people got, the lower their socioeconomic status went. But when they were younger, it was like pretty ubiquitous. But we never defined that for anybody. And so what was happening was you'd get a hip hop group called the Guap Gang in Cleveland create a whole video that got millions of views back in 2009 or 2010. You'd have, I can't remember the guy's name, but the guy who did the White Claw summer video, you know, who creates one, and that's to the bros, you know, like everyone was creating their own. You had T-Pain buy and create his own 24 karat gold giant Four Loko pendant. Like these people were making it their own. We weren't paying for that stuff.
That's crazy. You just plugged into culture and you let people do whatever they wanted with it.
That's right.
You know what's also criminal, and last thing I'll say on this is Beatbox just came in here and did it way more aggressively, way more like intentionally, and not in that same way. And it's like totally kosher and we're all cool with it. And every investor and every distributor wants a piece of it. I mean, there's cartoons on the fucking.
I know those guys and they've done a great job riding. That hasn't been a short journey. I'm sure they told you, but look, I think we paved the way and gave a lot of air cover for a lot of brands. Like no brand's gonna be crazier, and no one's gonna have the perception of higher alcohol than Four Loko, even though their alcohol content by volume is essentially the same.
Thanks for innovating.
It's so true, and it's kind of crazy because now we get to this.
Yeah. Yeah, the hard left.
Yeah. How did we end up here? Is this the redemption tour?
Yeah. I've been told. Well, it's a good guess. It's partly along the way. So I'll add a little because you guys like that being candid. I'll go deeper. So what I didn't realize is for the last 2 years of my time at Fusion Projects, I was miserable, and I knew I wasn't happy, but I didn't realize how unhappy I was. And so I was now married. I had just had my second son, and I was trying to figure my own life, like who am I, right? And
how old were you at this?
So it would have been 34.
Okay.
And so, or 33, something like that. And I come home one night. I was coming home so frustrated because I just felt trapped in this company with these guys that I used to be best friends with, that we weren't best friends anymore. And it just felt really bad. I was drinking a bottle of wine by myself on the couch, sitting so I would get relief and like laughing, waking up with no hangover. My wife's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But anyway, she told me, she's like, you haven't been yourself for 2 years. And that was like this eye-opening, holy shit, I really lost myself in this entrepreneurial journey and in this company. And so I knew I had to make something happen. We couldn't figure it out. And I woke up one day at a trade show, got an email that I was fired from my company. My partners had outed me, and they were able to do this legally, remove me from the board, and I was like, holy shit. The craziest thing is the first emotion I felt at that time was relief. And then anger set in later. But But I was like, okay, what am I going to do now after getting past that? What am I going to do now? And I spent like 6 months just doing a bunch of stuff. I'll spare you all the details, but trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I invested in a couple early stage brands. And one of them was Koia 1.0. It was called Raw Nature 5. And these entrepreneurs were in Chicago. It was very small. It was in like 20 stores. But my second son was born. He was dairy intolerant, so we became a dairy-free household. So you were right. But at that time, like dairy-free meant soy. It wasn't. There was no Oatly. There was no like this plant-based movement. And so I was kind of the local entrepreneur that when they had questions, they would ask me. And within a couple months, the company was on the verge of insolvency, and so I came in, funded it. We shut it down for 6 months. We pivoted to create Koia, and we launched it in 16. So that's the quick version.
And now where we're at, how many doors we're
So
pushing?
now we're out in 35,000 doors across the country. Our biggest win recently in distribution is we're in all the Starbucks across the country. Yeah, we recently launched on Amazon with our new shelf-stable stuff, and and we're going.
This is crazy. So I mean, that's pretty tight. Do you, now that you're not a big digital dude, like this is all digital. There's a lot of other things. Is there anything like interesting, like kind of parting words, because you've done it big on the retail side. You're starting to understand like we do need to have a digital presence. We are on Amazon. What's something interesting to you that you're like, I think this is really curious, our brand should be paying attention to?
And what's your book called?
My book is called Blackout Punch, An Entrepreneur's Journey from Chaos to Clarity. And I think for me, one of the things that I was a little bit scared to go onto Amazon because I was worried the retail game is cutthroat, right? Sure. And if your product is not performing, it's gone and someone else's is in. And I was worried that if we launched on Amazon, we were going to cannibalize our brand. And this may be intuitive to all of you, it was not to me. We launched on Amazon. We launched at almost the same price. We offered a multi-pack discount, right? So let's just call it $5 at retail. We're $4.50 per box on Amazon. And we noticed that we had not only took off immediately in a very competitive category, but our velocities at retail went up significantly. And so I was kind of kicking myself, like, what the hell took me so long?
Late?
Yeah, because all the stuff that you guys are talking about the effect on, all of it was, I was afraid of, but was totally true.
Yeah, and we learn this every single day. Knowing like we need more retail doors, which means we need to continue to grow on the D2C side, and it's just a very full circle. But you're Miami local. You're here.
Yeah, I'm here. I live up in Belmead and love in Miami, and as you said, looking to build a bigger network here. So
yeah, I mean, I've followed this. I read the book. I understand you're obviously paving the way for stuff that means a lot to us, and so I'm thankful for you to be here and talk to us. Anybody in Miami, he's building network. Thanks again, Chris. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you so much. Absolutely, it was awesome.